find out if I'm going to be here or she's going.
You can go ahead and start, and just we'll let the record reflect when the member shows up.
Calling the meeting to order. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands. The invocation is not on the agenda. Should I go ahead and do it? Sure. Okay, here. We gathered to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. Thank you. Oh, reading the wrong agenda. Sorry, folks. Start with the approval of the minutes from January 8th, 2019. Does anyone have any changes, corrections?
On page 4, this is minor, but under Roman numeral 6:1, just a typographical Eve. She's got talking about roofs, and in several places she's got in reference to an Eve, EVE. It's a Eve, EAVE. My major contribution. And I would like to say that in general, these are well-drafted minutes. Who drafts these minutes, by the way?
I don't know their name, but it's somebody outside.
Is somebody new on this one?
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought they were pretty well-drafted, actually.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I move approval of the minutes with that minor typographical change.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. We'll open up the public hearing for Lynn Hall Park Dune walkover. Mr. Attorney, do you want to do just a swearing in of everybody?
Is there going to be any from the county? Okay. We'll swear them in if they show up. So, do you swear to give state the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Right. Witness has been sworn in. Also, it would be appropriate to disclose any ex parte communications you may have had with to this item.
I have none.
None. None. One more little housekeeping thing. We don't have a sign-in sheet.
Okay.
All right.
We'll make sure that we open up the public hearing and let everyone know.
If we had to sign in before we did that or not, so.
No.
Okay. County's here. Sorry. All right. Let me swear him in when he
Yes.
comes up and speaks. All right.
If the county rep is going to speak, we need to swear you in. Let's go ahead and do it just in case. Sure. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Witness has been sworn.
All right. Moving on. Thank you for that.
Good morning, Sarah Probst, Community Development. The Lee County Board of Commissioners has requested two variances for the construction of 4 dune walkovers at Lynn Hall Park. Currently, the park features 4 at-grade walkovers, and the county would like to reconstruct the dunes and construct elevated walkovers. A variance is required for the width of the dune walkover. Section 6-366D3 states that non-residential dune walkovers shall be 6 feet wide. The proposed walkovers are 10.5, 6.5, 8, and 8.5 feet. Variance is also required for the elevation of the dune walkovers. Section 6-366D4 states that walkovers must be elevated at least 2 feet above the highest point of the dune and dune vegetation. The proposed walkovers and ramps were designed to meet ADA slope requirements of 1 foot of rise to 12 feet of run, and an additional 2 feet of height would require an extension of the walkways 24 feet further. The applicant is also here if you have any questions.
One quick question. Are you going to address the email, or should we put this email in the public record that showed up in all of our email boxes last night?
Not show up in my email.
You did not get it?
I don't believe so.
All right. Everyone there's an extra copy of it. Everyone on the LPA was given an email last night from Kurt Cromer, specifically addressing this. I'll give you a minute to read it real quick.
Yeah, just, to give you some guidance with respect to the email that you received, since the individual who submitted the information is unable to testify in person and technically be subject to cross-examination, when giving it the weight and consideration, you should take that in consideration, that it essentially, in legal parlance, constitutes hearsay. But in these types of proceedings, the formal rules of evidence are relaxed.
Okay.
But you should take that into account in giving the information that you see here, whatever weight you want to, is that their individual is not here in person and subject to potential questioning by you as well as the applicant, if that were to be of significance.
My bigger concern, though, is that this is something that we're going to see in front of us, and the decisions that are made here by this particular group here this is going to come up again, and that we need to probably address the differences and the changes that he brings up so that there is some clarification on the board side as to why he's bringing up some significant issues here with the dune walkover, that, everything that we say and do here is public record. It will come back to us.
Sure,
And
of
so
course.
I want to make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's.
And certainly, any other particular individual or applicant who comes before you can request the same deviations that the county has asked for, and argue the same reasons why the county believes they should be entitled to them if they are applicable to that particular circumstance. And that is the last thing that I would tell you, is that each application should be reviewed on its own merits, and just because you grant one applicant deviations to your criteria does not mean that that sets a precedent and that you have to give it to everyone else who comes before you. Each one is reviewed, again, on its own merits, and if they meet the criteria and there's arguably a staff recommendation, then certainly you can take that into consideration.
And I do appreciate the advice, but also at the same time, we get a lot of, this is why, applies to one person, but then why doesn't it apply to me? We get that a lot, and so I just, again, dotting my i's and crossing my t's on this one, because he is bringing up some significant
And that is why I
concerns.
mention it.
All right, I appreciate it.
Can I give some 2 cents here?
Yeah.
If you read the email, it's not related to this case. He's not commenting on this case. He's commenting on codes that are part
Related
of
to this
related
case.
to deviations or variances, excuse me. So I think it's more of, to me, I read it quickly as I don't want to characterize it, but a support for changes to the code, which is what we've discussed. And we've discussed on a regular basis, if you give common variances on a regular basis to certain things, your variance section says that, then you should evaluate whether to change your codes. So I think in a nutshell, that's really all it is. is
Kinda
using
read it,
this as a
he's coming in front of
platform.
us.
He's using, well, correct, and it may be under a different code, or it may be under the existing code. So it's really just, I think, a platform for him to promote it's an opportunity to say, I think the code should be changed.
Do you have anything in addition for this?
No, I mean,
Okay.
if you have questions for me, I can address those.
Okay. Go for it.
But if I see this correctly, these are issues which we discussed at some length at our last meeting, correct?
To an extent, but he brought up some good points, is that,
He did, and it's there's another deviation here. The only problem I have with just kind of is that they're adding, there's a distance deviation, which we didn't discuss. That was not part of the hearing at the last month, was it? The height and the width and the height and width and the location were
yeah.
approved.
Well, no, we had a special exception approved last
That a
month.
special session approved. You're correct. What I'm going to say is the variations for the other variations were deferred, but we had evidence on that. We heard evidence, and I don't know that we have to hear it again, really.
No, so I think there is no other variances or deviation other than what's being requested by the applicant at this point. I think what you're getting into is this email writer's opinion of whether the technical requirements of the application are met or not, which is a separate review that we do in-house and is not necessarily a public decision. If they either meet it or they don't. And if they end up not being able to meet something and they haven't asked for a variance for it, then they'll have to come back and ask for a variance for it. But in their opinion, and so far to ours, they have not needed one for those other items. But again, after this is done, we will finish a development order technical review that they'll have to meet all the other standards that they did not get a variance for.
Including the perpendicular deviation.
Correct. There is no deviation. There is no request for variance for that.
That's my point.
Correct.
Right.
There's nothing that's been said that one's needed.
Oh, all right.
That is the drafter of the email's opinion and his review that he thinks perhaps it needs one, from what I read. I can't comment on it until the development order review is done.
But didn't you, excuse me, it was mentioned that there is a length deviation due to the ADA requirements of 12, the rise over the run for the ADA.
No, there's no length requirement. There's a height requirement that they're not meeting, and the reason that they chose to ask for the deviation from that is because they would have needed an additional 24 feet, so there would be a higher impact on the environmentally critical area. So it was sort of a weighing the pros and the cons, and they didn't intend to plant vegetation underneath. So at the highest point of the dune, they're not 2 feet above it.
Does it make sense to address the code in the width deviation due to the fact that doesn't every one of these going to have to meet the ADA codes? No?
Private property is not generally subject, unless it is a public accommodation, a hotel, or some other type of facility that's open to the general public. A purely private beach walkover, and I guess I should define public, purely private, one that the general public does not have general access to as invitees, then no, it does not necessarily have to meet the ADA criteria. That would be up to the individual applicant whether or not they wanted to make it a wider one because maybe a family member has accessibility issues.
Comments for Chair here, for the town?
The fact that I understand why they're building up the dune underneath where the walkover is coming off so that we don't erode there, but won't any dune walkover have the same issue with coming in and hitting waves, hitting the poles and backwashing it out?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I'm just, the town has asked for not to have to have plantings underneath because it's going to be so tight because they're going to backfill that. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, this is probably a better question for the applicant.
Why don't we, if we could have the applicant
Sure.
address the,
Okay.
because they've had conversations with DEP and other
Okay.
design criteria. If you want to hold that question until the applicant can speak. And I don't know if you want to do that now or if you want to finish.
Pretty much one and the same, it's, if you'd like to speak.
Sure, Mark Kincaid for the record. So to address your question, it's kind of a catch-22. If you try to plant plants underneath of the boardwalk, the chance of them surviving is not that good because it's an active walkway and everybody that walks over that is tracking sand up and sand's going to fall down. There's going to be sand accumulation underneath it there. It's not direct sunlight. There's just a lot of factors against. Even if you go look at boardwalks that have been in existence in a long time, there aren't healthy, thriving plants underneath there. So we didn't feel the need to spend money to put plants underneath there, knowing that it's not going to be successful. If we did say, okay, we're going to put plants and then we're going to raise it up 2 feet, the catch-22 part is we wouldn't get permission from the DEP to extend the walkways out on the beach. We've already had to pull back to meet the DEP permitting requirements. So that's what I'm saying. It's a catch-22. You guys want it 2 feet up, but if we moved it 2 feet up, then DEP's not going to permit it. So we can't come back to you and say, oh, we're going to build it 2 feet up because. So the county is trying to be accommodating to the public. It's not a requirement to make all of the accesses ADA. We could probably be fine with making 25% of the accesses ADA, but they've chose to make 75% of the accesses here at this park ADA accessible, which I think is good. I think that nobody's complaining about that, but that is part of the width. The other part of the width is that the volume of people going through there. This is a public park that you have a high volume of traffic going through there. If we were restricted to that width, you could imagine somebody's going to the beach and somebody's leaving the beach and they're carrying their beach accoutrements and umbrellas and beach chairs and coolers. It would be very difficult to navigate something that's less than 5 feet with two-way traffic. So it does two things. It allows ADA accessibility and it's accommodating the heavier traffic that is seen at this public park.
Well, but by making 3 out of the 4 wider, it's 1, more expensive, 2, taking away more beach, and.
Why do you say it's taking away more beach?
Well, I mean, it has to come out on the beach to land, so if you're going to make them ADA, it has to be a long ramp to get them down there, so it is taking away places where people are sitting now.
Right, but if you look at the plans, we've come out to the edge of the vegetation and then we've turned it so it runs parallel to the vegetation. So it's not extending out further onto the beach. It's running parallel.
Well, my question is that if we could get by with 1 ADA, why are we having 3? I mean, just because it seems it would be more expensive to build and it has to be wider, so it's taking up more space. Is there a way to cut it down to 2 and have 1 at each end or whatever?
Well, there's always different ways to do things. This is what the county's path that they've chose to move forward. It's not just the ADA accessibility, it's the volume of people that are going through there. So even if you said, let's just make 1 ADA, that doesn't relieve the other issue of traffic leaving and coming and a restricted width on those. If you're building a walkover at a single-family residence or at a condo, you're not anticipating the same kind of traffic that you would at this park. So this is a circumstances that's going to be a little bit different than most other places on the beach, in that this is probably, correct me if you guys think I'm wrong, but this is probably the most popular beach park destination on the island. So try and find a parking spot after 10 o'clock today, you're probably not going to be able to get one. So, and it'll be that way until the sun sets, and then maybe you can find a parking spot after people start leaving for the sunset.
Also, you have to remember, people have not just ADA requirements, but people have baby strollers, people are lugging trolley or
Christian wants to
carts,
take to the
and
beach.
Right,
The
and
days of just bringing a towel and a hat, that's it.
one of the
Gone.
other, they're not all ADA for the width. The widest one, which is all the way to the west end, is for equipment access. So the beach uses it to bring on their service vehicles. The FWC uses it to bring on four-wheelers to check the turtles. There's a lot of vehicle access going on and off. I think just the other day, they had a call that there was excessive red algae that had accumulated on the beach. So they had to take a tractor out and clean up the algae. So the tractor has to access the beach somewhere. And that, in your own code, there's a code that states you're not supposed to drive through the dune, you're supposed to have access to go over the dune. Well, you can't go over the dune and get access with equipment on a 5-foot wide walkway. So that one is not ADA accessible. The widest one is not for ADA. It's intended for the general public and equipment when equipment needs to go over.
This is for the town. If you haven't noticed, I've got the most powerful readers on and I am still doing this. Could you get us some bigger, because my next question, it has been brought up to us, or town and county, been brought up to us that these showers are going to be on the dune side and in the sand side of this. Is that, I can't tell from this thing, because
Yeah,
in a
that's
magnifying
that
glass, I
size would
can't
work.
even tell where the delineation line is.
Well, one,
Yeah.
If
they
you
have
like,
bigger
but
plans.
I know.
I
but
just want to be
some
careful
hair
about
bigger.
what's in front of you, I guess. So, no, our original review, they were not, they're not in the EC.
They're not, but they, okay.
Okay, so they're not in the zoning district that we are discussing as far as the regulations. Just remember, I'm going to say this over and over again, and I've said it last meeting. We're talking about EC zoning district regulations versus other zoning districts.
But this is nice to have, because again,
Yes, I understand.
this is nearly impossible.
Well, again, a lot of it
know.
wasn't intended for you to have to read it because it's engineering design that is not part of this discussion, really, so.
We're talking here, here, and here.
This is one currently, but it just cuts through the dune. We're going to plant that.
So it's not going to be there in the future.
That's correct.
Is everybody on mic? Or put it up, put it
Oh,
up.
put
so
up?
that- Yes.
Can you hear him too?
There.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
All right.
Okay. So the access B is shifted slightly so it aligns with the existing restrooms. So there's already a ADA ramp that comes up to the restrooms. So that'll eliminate building that to make this accessible. And there's also stairs there. So there's, whether you're coming from the east side or the west side of that building, there's ADA access to get up to the restrooms. And then once you're at the restrooms, you can walk straight out that walkover to the beach. It just made more sense than having to come down here and build more structure. It condensed everything, and this is
be a long ramp starting at the parking lot so that you can,
it starts right
over.
here at the end of the sidewalk.
oh, okay. And this, where's the other one that's going to have the ADA going back and forth?
Well, this is the one for the equipment.
Nope,
No,
No,
this is
the
that
one
one
for the
is,
equipment.
that one's down here.
This is probably the most used one. That's right beside the pier.
That doesn't have to have the zigzag back and forth. It's high enough to just go from the platform that is existing down?
Let's switch pages.
Much better, much
Okay.
better.
Yeah,
You're
they-
gonna want this.
They were never intended to be printed out on 8.5 by 11.
Right.
Yeah.
So access A, that's the equipment access. It's just going to be a straight shot. This is access B. This is the one that's going to come off of the bathroom. And it's going to be a straight shot to there and a straight shot there. No switchbacks. Access C is also a straight shot, no switchbacks. And here's access D, and there is a switchback there.
This is right at the, where the stores are and everything.
Right
Times
next to the
Square.
pier, yes.
Okay. That takes up, what is the width of this?
Yeah, 8.6,
30,
6.6, 12.
Yep, so if you want to look at it
24 plus 12, so you have
back on the plan view,
36 feet. 36 this way.
here it is on the plan view.
So all this blue is going to be it now. But look at also here,
let me see,
these newer ones that they're building, the newer structures,
they're back, but.
But there's, go ahead.
Is also being enlarged? Thank you.
The equipment walkover is going through the same path,
Same path, but it's enlarged?
just slightly. We're going to encroach in a little bit of the vegetation on the, if you're looking at the beach, on the left side of it.
Okay.
But we're going to replant that tenfold out in front. So there's not going to be there'll be a net gain of vegetation. It won't be a loss.
Any other questions?
I do. So existing right now, is this the line that the vegetation is, or are you going to come out from here to here with more vegetation?
Let's look at this so that I don't misspeak. There is a legend here. And the green is the new planting. The purple on here is a supplemental planting area where, like in this is purple. We found that that's not, there's some vegetation there, but it's not in very good shape, right? So we're planning to replant that area with more plants to help boost it.
I thought the discussion last time was that you're going to remove the vegetation that's there because it's not healthy and looking good and replant it, but you weren't going to take any more sand to fill in with vegetation. It appears to me you're taking another lots of feet
Lots of
of the
feet for what?
beach, of the vegetation. If you're saying that the purple is what was existing, or that's supplemental, how do we know where the line goes now? What is the existing vegetation line?
Okay, so see this blue line? That's the crest of the frontal dune. That's where the highest point of the dune is.
But is this
So if
because
you-
you're adding sand to the
No,
dune?
not because we're adding sand. That's the existing,
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
This,
So-
but these variances were already
I
approved
know.
last.
But
so-
looking at it, I just want to just
Okay.
understand if they're really coming out all that much further, but it appears not.
no, we're not trying to, the beach is already crowded. We don't trying to shrink it. What we're trying to do is stabilize this back here and protect when
The structure.
it's
colors
it's
come
not
out.
if the storm's going to come, it's when the storm comes. We're trying to plant plants to stabilize the sand to hold the dune there so that the water's not coming up into the parking lot and into
I
the
understand.
street.
I just wanted to verify the line, so I just wanted
Yes.
to make sure that all of that green wasn't going to be new sand to put new plants on to take away
It is
beach.
not.
Okay.
And from the looks of what I saw on there, it looked like the foot wash stations are back.
I assume that's where the benches are?
No, there was a couple different places that they put them, but you cannot see them on this thing.
So again, just for the public, if in a case of there was a wash station or something on those plans shown in front of seaward of the EC line, that's not being approved today to be there. All you're being asked for is the 2 variances, and then we will finish the technical review, and that is part of that review, just to make it clear. So you're not formally approving this design in the site plan. It still has to finish our review. I just want to make that clear. Because you made the statement, it looks like it's behind, but we will make sure that it is compliant with the zoning districts where development is being requested.
Okay.
I have a question which is really not relevant to the decision of the issue, but how is this being financed? The county, of course, is paying for, is it TDP funds? TDC funds? Just curious to tell you.
I'm not 100% sure if all the funds are coming from TDC. I believe that it's being partially funded by TDC, but I can't tell you
All right, thank you.
100%
That's
that
all
all the
right,
funds.
thank you.
Okay.
I know that was, you think you've mentioned $480,000, and, yeah, I'm ready to make a motion if we're through.
I just had one quick question for the county. Could you reiterate the timeline again for the project, if you could? The timeline?
We wanted to build that this last fall.
So when do you plan to start? When do you
Well,
hope to finish?
it would be after spring break. They don't want to interrupt the busiest time of the season. We wait until it's at the slackest time. We can't do anything until we get approval from the town. So to sit here and tell you that we plan on doing it at this time, like I said, the county had plans. They wanted to do it last year.
I got it.
So as soon as it's approved, we'll move forward. The specifications and the construction plans are done with what we showed. So we would move forward, but we wouldn't start construction until after season.
Thank you.
All right, before your motion, public comment. Anyone like to speak?
Hey, it's public hearing. Say
Public hearing.
Public hearing.
Morning, Madam Chair, board members, staff, and visitors. I am Leon Moyer. I've been attending these types of hearings for many, many years, 25, 30, various places around the country, and they do not, well, they usually do have the same format, and this one didn't this morning. I want to put into evidence the sign that was posted at the park. So if you have easy access to that sign, I'd ask you to bring it in for the board to look at because it was incorrect. It had an address on there of the hearing this morning as being held at 2523 Estero Boulevard. Is that the address of this building? I think it's 2525. Is that a big deal? The point is, your attorney should have offered that sign into evidence. That wasn't done properly at the beginning of the meeting, because that must be part of the packet when you approve something, so that people can go back and say, yes, we did post it, we had it perhaps in newspaper listing, and it becomes part of the record, just like all the other paperwork, including the email you talked about this morning. That's part of the record now, that you've acknowledged it. And of course, these drawings, the architecture, engineering drawings, they've already been included in your packet, because this is important to have a public record of what's being done here. You have tractor access through Bowditch Park now, driving through the dunes. Why aren't they building a walkway over those dunes if they're so concerned? They have a chain link fence at the big circle up there in Bowditch, and they have 2 tractors parked there with 2 algae gatherers and a dump truck going in and out there. So they can access the beach that way and go clear down to Lynn Hall if they had to. Now, if you want an ambulance in at Lynn Hall, that's a separate issue. You probably do need access for that type of vehicle or ATVs. I disagree with your attorney. He said that this is private property.
No, it's not.
It's not.
I did not say that.
He did not mention private property on this. He said there's a difference between private property and this.
I totally misunderstood him on that. Okay, sorry, yeah. Because it is public property, and therefore, the public is an invitee to public property. And therefore, that was part of the issue that you were discussing earlier in this here. I guess that's my big issue, that there's a certain procedure to follow in this, and I don't think it was quite followed like I'm used to seeing at other hearings by other government organizations. Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Moyer. Does the sign say the town hall at 2325 or?
Is it Town Hall 2523?
But it says town hall.
If they go to the they go to the Chapel by the Sea next door, they're going to know that that's not town hall.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a big deal. I'm saying,
right.
why do these things happen, and they can't be dealt with if you're not aware of them, because
Well,
you didn't have the sign put into evidence like it should have been.
Okay.
If I may.
Madam Chair, yeah, staff would like to address that issue.
Well, Town Hall is 2525 and 2523 Estero. It's both addresses.
Okay.
And so the record is complete, this meeting was properly advertised, this particular public hearing was properly advertised. So, and clearly from Mr. Moyer's own statements, the property was properly posted as well.
Would you like to go ahead with your motion?
I would like to move that we adopt the findings as set forth on the package, page 12 through 14, findings A through E, the findings that are in the bold print, and accept the recommendation of approval by the staff of approval of 201-830, deviation from the 6 feet in width, and also approval of 201-900-09, the deviation for elevation less than 2 feet above dune vegetation.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 7-0.
And just for the public's information, we'll package this up, I guess, so to speak, with the special exception that you reviewed and those recommendations to the council for next month.
Moving along, we are going to recess as a local planning agency. Do I hear a motion to recess as the
So moved.
LPA and open as Historic Preservation Board? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are now the Historic Preservation Board. And I'm going to turn it over to the chair, the HPB, Scott Safford.
Thank you. Scott Safford for the record. We had our first meeting of the year on January 26th. Basically went over a list of properties that we're going to target for historic recognition. I want to thank Joanne Champ for helping us get that list a little bit stronger. So we've had lists all over the place, and looks like we're moving forward. Susan has done a fantastic job, and the information that Joanne provided us, I think, is even going to make the list stronger. Moving forward, our meeting this month is going to be the fourth Tuesday at 9 a.m. here, and we're going over marketing and promotional ideas for our program. We're kicking around some ideas for social media, print media, flyers, and even attending some events around the island. Once we develop a plan, then we're going to come up with a budget, and we're going to present that to the town.
Do you have full members, or are there any open seats still?
We still have 2 open seats.
Okay. And are those being advertised or actively promoted to see if anybody in the public would like to be part of this?
I've been actively promoting it. I know I got a call from KT, who was on our committee last year, and she expressed some interest after spring break that she'd like to apply. And I believe it's on the website. Is that correct, Jason? That there's still 2 openings.
It should be. I'll check to make sure we're keeping that up there.
And then there's still no update on the Red Cottage. They're still trying to decide some type of how can I put this the best way? The former owner wants some type of letter for tax purposes. So that's kind of where it is right now. And then Jason, you want to talk to us about the meeting you had about the flood?
I'll just be brief since there is a recognition on the agenda, but essentially we're just trying to verify code compliance with the exemptions that are allowed under building code and which ones are not. So that when, because generally there are difference between commercial and residential property. And so we're getting some opinions on that as far as once you move a property off of a site, do the exemptions always apply? Once it's not used for residential purposes anymore, do they apply? So those things are what we're trying to finalize as far as interpretation of the building code. There was some, just the background, there's some concern on whether some of those exemptions applied or not.
Okay.
Since the building has been moved and since it's no longer a residential purpose. So we're just reviewing that to make sure that we have all that information properly before anybody moves anything again.
Okay, is that going to be reviewed and then potentially changed? Here's the concern, is that there's many a times these cottages, and I can see it coming, just like this one, they want to tear it down. We now need to go find a place to put this said cottage, and there's going to be that period of time that it may have to be moved. Is there some way to fix the situation so that we can allow for that? And because at the end of the day, the goal for HPB is to save these cottages, and if we put up something like this, then here comes a wrecking ball.
It's a fine line because of the intended use of the building and the structures that we're talking about after they get moved. That's a concern and something that we have to take into account. So I don't have the answer for you other than it's a complicated web of if this, then that. In addition to that, there may be some resolution that the town can do in their local flood plain management ordinance. We'll have to discuss that. Obviously, that takes some time. But again, it's trying to get it kind of hammered out now so that if there's others that want to do this, then we have the clear answer. So and it's confusing, frankly, not to pass the buck, but it's confusing to everybody. I had a meeting with the state floodplain manager's office and several floodplain managers from around the region, and none of that's it's not super clear to everybody. So, and everybody's ordinances are a little bit different too. So
The problem with getting a letter for tax purposes, it was donated to,
that's not we're not involved
Yeah,
in that.
we're not
There's
involved
nothing
in
to do
that.
with that.
That's between the two parties.
All we're trying to do is
two
make sure
parties as of who?
the
Mike
owner
Huffman and
the receiver, I guess, is the term I'll use.
And the receiver is going to be,
Right. All we're trying to do is identify considerations that would have to go into site or structural design related to flood compliance before a building gets moved. We don't want it on the way and somebody realizes, or everything gets arranged and a permit gets submitted, and then at the back end of the permitting process we say no or something like that. So we're just trying to make everybody get as aware as possible what the regulations will apply before anything's submitted.
I kind of hate to say this, why do we care if it's raised or not? Originally it started on the ground level anyways. If it floods and they can't probably get insurance because the usefulness of the building and the value of the building is zero. So I kind of getting this, I get it, we have our rules, but this is one of those that goes, it kind of doesn't make all that much sense sometimes. Because if a flood's coming, no one's going to be standing inside that building. If we're doing it for the public safety piece, we're doing it to save a building that has zero value. It's other than historic value, let's say. I just,
I agree.
where my head is.
We had talked about pretty soon, everything's going to be the Jetsons. Everything's going to be 500 feet up in the sky.
Well, the building started at ground level to start with. If a flood was coming, it would have flooded on that property and been a waste and a wash and, not a waste, but a loss.
Well, as Jason said, our goal is to make it, when we have a situation like we had with the Red Door Cottage, we have a plan in place, and we have the obstacles, and the town can give the proper guidance and get permitting done in an expeditious manner, so. that's our goal.
It's really about the difference between me moving a house from A to B site and then putting it back on the ground when I have the opportunity to elevate it versus a historic structure that and or may be used for other purposes. So there is a difference between those two. I would agree with you on the historic side of it, on the other side of it for protection of life and safety, if you're going to lift it and move it, you might as well lift it and raise it. If you're going to continue to use it as residential purposes, and that's why it's got to be something significant to overcome that. So we're just trying to make sure that the exemptions under the building code for historical reasons match the intent of this and perhaps other structures.
And the biggest item on today's agenda is the historic recognition for the F&B Women's Club located at 127 Sterling Street. They've applied for CHI2 recognition, and we have that in your packet. Does anybody have any comments? The application is fantastic, by the way.
I loved it. It was great.
It was great reading up all the history
Yep.
of that building in this area.
We're going to take public
We're
comment.
going to.
Joanne, would you like
Well,
to come forward?
first things first, is there anyone
Well,
from the
first-
applicant?
first- first
Is there
of all-
anyone here from the applicant? You want to testify for the applicant? Okay. It's a public hearing. Does she take, or there's an alluded,
Yeah, no, I asked staff, the director, to explain to me, since this is the first time that I've had a application here before you all, where I've been your attorney, and I've been informed that that this is really a direct application matter from the applicant directly to the town. And so there isn't necessarily a public hearing process. It's just whether or not the application meets the criteria for qualifying as a historic structure. So I would say that in abundance of caution, being the person that I am, it never hurts to swear in with the witness and be over-inclusive than under-inclusive. So do you swear to give to give the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. Joanne Champ, for the record. I'm just speaking as a member of the Women's Club and a person who assisted with the application. And I'm not concerned about any conflict because town council does not vote on this. So there's no conflict here. But this is really an exciting structure. The Women's Club as a whole membership did vote on this and deciding between Category 1 and Category 2 and chose to go with Category 2. It is exciting when you read the background and especially it relates so much to the pattern of development on the island, because in World War II, when they brought all the soldiers in, and then the WPA actually designed and built this for a school. So it's actually quite a fascinating history, and I personally admit I wish they'd gone for Category 1, but it was their comfort level to go to Category 2, and I'm just happy to get this before the public and have the public understand one more piece of the fascinating history that we have on the island. So if there's any questions. It's just great that it's going to be used continue to be used for civic purposes, and a lot more people will get to go to that location, walk through it, and then continue to enjoy it. So thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion?
any public comment?
Public comment? Any other public comment?
All right, now you can.
All right, I'd like to get a motion for HDD 2019-0007.
Second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 7-0.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's cool.
That concludes what I have. Does anyone else have anything else?
Anything for the HPB? Concerns, things you've seen, anything of that sort? All right, I make a motion to adjourn as the HPB and reconvene as the local planning agency.
Second that motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are now the LPA again. All right, moving along. LPA members, items, and reports. We'll start with Tim. Do you have anything?
Nothing.
Jim?
Nothing, thank you.
I'll just say that the candidate forum last night was fairly well attended, seemed to be packed out pretty well. I guess there's another one at Commotion by the Ocean that's going to be held at, does anybody know, Fishdale? Where?
The Propeller Lounge at Fishdale.
Oh, okay. And what date is that, do you know?
That is tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah, Wednesday night.
I believe the meeting starts at 6, and I think the commotion starts at 6:30.
Always good to be informed.
Scott, do you have anything?
I do not.
Nothing.
Nothing.
I do not have anything this month either. LPN attorney items. Anything for us?
No.
Thank you. Jason, you're up. Anything for us?
No, just to kind of warm you up for next month, that will load you up. Congratulations. So I think a variance, the tech specs will come back. Again, I didn't put them on this agenda because I was concerned about time with the joint. And then hopefully I can get the ear stuff, some of the edits we're making and wrapped up and brought to you for that. The evaluation appraisal report, comprehensive plan, consistency with state law. I would like to get that done before they change state law again. Which is, and if you'd like, I think actually, in thinking about this, I was at a workshop and retreat this week with APA Florida, and we're going over the legislative bill. So by next month, we should have a really good grasp on what bills are submitted, and the legislators are whatever they're going to do with them. So I can provide a summary of that for you, so you can highlight some of the community development stuff that's related to your role, and I'll provide that to you in your packet. There's a lot of activity, and there's a lot of conversation about activity, so we'll see how that goes.
You want to tell us anything more about the March 7th workshop, anything of that sort? I know that a couple of us said they could attend. I believe I can.
Okay, so it is formally on, and so if you would like, we'll take care of that. So just let me know, finalize with you who wants to go, and I'll sign you up. And again, it's in Punta Gorda. And your day on March 7th, we'll talk about all your roles under state law and some ethics and sunshine law and all those kind of refreshers. And it's from a gentleman that's been doing this for about 40 years, and he's the guy to go to in the state when talking about this. So it's partly supported by IFAS and Florida, our section, the American Planning Association Promised Land section, FPZA. There's a bunch of groups that are supporting us. So it's going to be a pretty big draw, a regional draw from Sarasota, Highlands maybe as far as that.
All-day event?
So it's pretty much all day. I think it's till 3:30, but it'll be fun. So afterwards, if you want to just finalize with me if you're going.
Yeah. And Dan said he was in. Jim said he was in.
Me too.
Did you say? Yeah.
Yes.
So.
I'll get you.
I need to ask for an excused absence on the 12th of March, which will be our next meeting, correct? I'll be unavailable.
Thank you for a heads up. All right.
Thank you.
Now we're off to public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Leon Moyer again for the record. And I want to maintain credibility here, so I've Googled 2523. And it comes back as an administrative address. But way back on October 7th, 2013, you actually used that address on your council minutes meetings. So the problem is that outside on the sign, there's only one address, and that's 2525. These pre-printed signs that you're using for notification to the public are probably old. Yeah, and my point remains that when you hold hearings like this, I've always experienced that the person who posts that sign testifies that they posted it on a certain day at a certain location and that they picked it up the morning of the hearing so that you know that the public had legal access to a notice at the site that's being reviewed, whether it's variances, zonings, and things of that nature. That may not be the way it's been done, but I believe that makes a perfect record that way, that just like when you mentioned newspaper printings and that they're on file, that you've done that part of compliance with public notification. And I would suggest you change that address on those signs simply by crossing it out to 2525, because if people drive by and see 2525 and looking for 2523, they may keep searching, and that would be frustrating. So other than that, thank you for your attention, and I appreciate listening to you all ask questions and discuss these issues. I learned a lot that way. Thank you.
All right, so I think we've made it through our agenda. And
This is a record 1 hour meeting.
I didn't want to say it.
For an hour.
I did not want to say it.
The one day you didn't want to have a record, right?
Really?
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What time is our next meeting?
11.
11, so we've got an hour.
To kill, yes.
Let's see, where can we go have Bloody Marys now? Off the record, off the record.
Cocktail hour?
Yeah.